bell tolls. The midnight hour is upon us. It's time once again for two internet strangers to discuss the good and evil of the horror genre. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the terror within the Hallow-Holics Anonymous podcast.
All right, pupils, I have to attend something in the cafetorium. I expect you to continue to sit quietly in this detention hall and think about what you've done. A portal to the sixth dimension is not permitted on campus grounds. Hey, Maddie. Listen to this heartwarming essay I've written summarizing our life experiences today that will somehow go on to impact us for the rest of our lives, even though it was only a couple of hours.
Okay, go for it.
We accept the fact that we had to sacrifice a whole Saturday in detention for whatever it is we did wrong. But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. You see us as you want to see us, in the simplest terms and the most convenient definitions. But what we found out is that each of us is an Eskimo.
Brain.
And an Eskimo.
Athlete.
And an Eskimo.
Basket case.
An Eskimo.
Princess.
And an Eskimo.
Criminal. Yeah, so replace all of those Eskimos with the right words, and you should be good.
Why don't we just do the podcast real quick before she gets back, and I'll make the edits later.
Fine, but this isn't over.
Hi, I'm Corey.
I'm Maddie.
And this is Hallow-Holics Anonymous, a show dedicated to all things horror and occasionally Halloween.
So, it was the end of the spring semester for me, and Corey?
Yeah, it was the end for me, too. Wait, were you setting up a bit?
No.
Oh. Yeah, it was the end for me, too. I spoke at my student's graduation like a grown-up. I wore most of a suit, but I wore a T-shirt with the sleeves cut off that said, "I don't work here," under my jacket, so I was super classy.
And just a little edgy.
Yeah, just a little edgy. It's how I roll, you know. I mean, I'm 40. You can't really be too edgy at my age. So, yeah, the students have been gone, but I spent this week building this ridiculous ramp for something that's happening when I'm gone. Tomorrow's my last day until fall.
I have to take a summer semester, and frankly, grad school, and at this point, all school is hell to me.
I can imagine.
That's actually kind of why I thought this episode would be a good time to focus on school horror, but not just slashers.
Listeners, it was actually kind of funny. She had just finished complaining in the Discord about a surprise paper she had, and then all of a sudden I get a message in our notes channel that says, "High school horrors," or something like that. You could tell that Maddie was working some shit out. It was pretty funny.
So again, I didn't want to just focus on slashers this episode, so I tried to come up with something that was a bit of a challenge, personally, and I didn't want to do the stuff that everybody had seen, like, you know, the faculty idle hands, etc., etc. So I decided to go with Disturbing Behavior from 1998.
Yeah, and I kind of did the exact opposite. I picked Heathers because I'm like, I know this movie, it'll be easy, but there is so much in that movie to talk about and unpack that, like, my notes are a mess.
But before we move on to kind of talking and going more into depth on our topic, why don't we talk about some horror news? Well, I'll start off by saying there are two major small horror film festivals coming up. One is the Horror News Net Film Festival. It just launched. Submit your films now. You can go to horrornews.net to find more info. And the other is the Buried Alive Film Festival 2018. It's the 13th annual Buried Alive Film Festival, and it's taking submissions now. Again, you can find more info on them at horrornews.net.
Lars von Trier's new movie, The House That Jack Built, saw 100 audience members walk out on a screening of it at Cannes recently because it was just too horrible to watch, too gory, too shocking, too whatever it was. This is marketing. This is Cannes marketing, obviously. I mean, I'm still super stoked for this movie. I think that Lars von Trier is probably one of the worst human beings in the film industry, and he was mean to my girl Bjork.
What?
Yeah, Bjork will never act again because of her experiences with him in Dancer in the Dark.
Oh, poor Bjork.
Yeah, poor Bjork. She's just such a little weird sweetheart. Nobody can treat her poorly, but I guess he put her through hell.
David Cronenberg's Rabbit is being remade, starring Laura Vandervoort.
I guess the one he cast the porn star in, right?
I believe so.
Rabbit's the one with the STD that makes everybody violent in the apartment complex.
I think so.
My point is the cast was so like they weren't the greatest actors, but it somehow added to the tension of that movie, and it was really, it's one of my favorites, but it's a strange film to like, and I can see why some people wouldn't, and I have no idea why they're remaking it, and they're just going to make it this stupid trash.
Freeform announces that 13 Nights of Halloween this year is going to be 31 Nights of Halloween, and
that's what it was.
Yeah, at least 15 of them will probably be Hocus Pocus.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm just hoping, like, I am a huge Pretty Little Liars fan, and I know it's over, and I know that Ravenswood didn't fly and it got canceled after one season, but the tone and the intro to the Pretty Little Liars Halloween episodes were always so good, and I dig Freeform. I dig teen drama. I'm going to give their 31 Days of Halloween 31 chances this year. And you can hold me to that in October, Maddie.
I will. I don't know if this constitutes as news, but in October we're hoping to find a sort of horror-themed D&D campaign to run on the show. If we can manage it, maybe an arc of 4 episodes. I don't know. We'll see.
I think we could manage it. I have 2 potential DMs right now. One who's kind of he's not really a horror DM, but he's into trying it. The problem is he's getting married very soon, and he teaches, so he doesn't know how much time he's going to have in October. The other dude is actually Barry, who I guarantee you is listening to this episode in one of the first few days it comes out, because he's a wonderful, supportive friend. But he's got some DMing experience as well, and he's a big fucking nerd, so I'm hoping he can be involved, but he's a family man too now. I think he has 2 kids. Dude, I'm sorry, I can't remember if you have 1 or 2 kids. However many you have, they're great, I'm sure.
But you're still a very good and close friend of Corey.
Yeah, well, because of his family and my marriage to my jobs, we don't really see each other very often. And he left town for a while. Like, these kids were, I think, spawned outside of Indiana, and then he brought them back.
He wasn't one of your friends from your broken glass in the parking lot high school expedition, was he?
No, I met him after that. I met him in college. That was in high school. But my point is, he's a good dude, and if he can help us out, he will. And listeners, if any of you have any experience role-playing or just want to be involved, hit us up on one of our methods of communication that we will tell you at the end, and we could use other people involved, even if it's not in a DM position, if it's more bodies or voiced NPCs or actual players. I don't know. We'll see what it morphs into.
And our last little segment here for horror news. I don't know if it's really news, but I think it's pretty awesome. Jonathan, who we featured in our Tales from the Crypt episodes, Bloody Disgusting noticed him, and they posted an article about his work with Tales from the Crypt, his videos.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. You know what time it is, don't you?
Yeah, it's time for the Stephen Pre-Memorial Guess That Death game. That I'm totally going to lose today because I kind of went for comedy rather than challenge.
All right. Well, I think in the last episode, if memory serves me correctly, I let you win.
I think I did win, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I let you win. All right. So.
Keep believing that. All right. Well, I'm going to save that question just in case it's a tiebreaker. That one's way too easy.
Now, you remember this is a 5-question game, right?
Yes, I did. Boobs out, lance to the face.
Oh, Carrie 2?
Nope.
Oh, what? Oh.
Do you want your clue?
Yes.
Chad Michael Murray is known for showcasing his brooding good looks.
I have no idea.
The remake of House of Wax, it's Paris Hilton's death.
Oh, yeah, I would not have gotten that.
Dude, it's one of the, like, say what you will about Paris Hilton, but her death scene in that movie is so cool. I can't remember if she's out of the car at this point. She's getting out of the car. And the one wax-face dude throws this, like, broken pipe lance at her, and it hits her right between the eyes. She falls to her knees and then falls face forward, so the pipe hits the floor and, like, digs into her brain a little bit more, and then she just dies in that position. It was so good.
Oh, my God.
I'm, like, oddly a Paris Hilton fan. I don't dig on the reality stuff, but, like, I'll watch a movie she's in. I really dug her in Repo the Genetic Opera. I thought she was playing a really good caricature of herself.
That's a good one. All right, so that's 1 point for Corey. We'll see how long it lasts. Did you learn nothing from your existential run-in with that demon? Never trust the sweaty career counselor.
Demons and sweaty career counselors. I would like a clue, please.
Kim Coates.
Oh, God damn it. That's why you asked me this. I was true to my word. I didn't look up Kim Coates movies.
Thank you very much, sir.
The problem is he's in so much stuff. I just watched a Western limited series like 2 months ago with him in it.
I'll admit, I felt guilty about this one because it was really tough to dig up. I only vaguely remembered it. And again, I didn't look it up, so I won't be able to guess based on this, but was that clip you sent me from that movie? No, that clip I sent you was from Innocent Blood.
Oh, that was him in Innocent Blood. I forget he was in Innocent Blood. It's been years since I've seen that. Yeah, I have no idea.
The Club from 1994.
Did you say The Club?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know he was in that. I love that movie. Well, I don't love it. I used to love it, and now I realize how bad it is.
Oh, it's terrible.
That main character is just doing that Jack Nicholson impersonation the whole time.
You know, it's a Lifetime Channel movie.
The Club. Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was just some terrible straight-to-DVD horror thing. It's the one where they do the Halloween dance in that big mansion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they get stuck in that weird purgatory where their choices influence whether or not they're all going to hell.
Yeah. Suicide gets you into the club. All right, anyway, 1-1 tied. Your next clue is hacked to death with a sickle.
Okay, I need a hint.
Buffy won't be slaying any more vampires.
Well, it can't be Buffy. That would be too easy.
Yeah, she only died like 14 times in that show anyways. None of them to sickles.
Oh, you're pulling from television shows.
No, these are all movies.
Oh, hacked to death with a sickle. I know what you did last summer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yay! The Offspring must have fallen on tough times performing at high school dances these days.
Idle hands.
Oh, I hate you! Let me finish it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll do it over.
Clever line. At least Dexter gets a good haircut out of the deal. Maybe just a little too much off the top, though.
Idle hands. I love that movie.
So I guess we're tied right now. It's a fun movie, yeah.
Stabbed with hedge trimmers. Not the kind that go bzz, but the kind that go snip, snip.
Can I get a hint?
Directed by Danny Cannon of Judge Dredd fame.
I hear you typing.
Yeah, I just realized I am short one.
Okay, I give up.
Okay, what was that? I left that page. Oh, of course, that was I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Maddie.
Oh, man, I hate you so much. I hate you. And that's like, I love that one even more.
I've never seen it. I YouTubed deaths in this one.
Okay, you need to watch part 2 because it is the perfect tongue-in-cheek sequel to any horror film because it is in that island kind of sequence situation. Part 3 is terrible. Never watch Part 3, but
Okay.
which is I'll always know what you did last summer. By the way, clever title.
Wait, what's that?
Well, I know what you did last summer. I still know what you did last summer, and then I'll always know what you did last summer. Yeah. Which was, I don't know why I thought I could power through all 3 of those in one day. I'll tell you. All right, so it's 3-2, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know I'm probably being a little harsh here, but anyone who just leaves their CDs lying in a stack like that deserves to have them impaled in their spines. It's just smart audio safety, people.
Oh, man, you're not screwing around with the 90s references this year, although I have no idea what this is. You brought up CDs. I mean, it's definitely not Hellraiser 3.
No, not at all. And I saw this sequence as a kid, and it was one of those scenes that just kind of stuck with me.
Clue me.
Oh, shoot, I didn't do a clue here. Okay, hold on, give me a second. Really good clue here. Jason London. Corey? Corey, are you there?
Sorry, I was muted again. That is a very good clue. Jason London. Oh, I should know this for sure. Or wait, just tell me. I hate my life.
The Rage, Carrie 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never seen that. I don't feel so bad.
Okay. You know, it's not an amazing film, but the sort of final battle death scene is pretty cool.
We are tied 3-3?
Yeah, as per usual, we are neck and neck.
Yep, because we're terrible at this. Drawn and quartered, but not with horses.
Clue.
The horses were trucks. Or a truck, I think. I think it was a truck and a tree.
A truck and a tree. Well, let's see. High school themed. I don't know.
The Hitcher.
Oh, that's a good one. Very vaguely related, but I'll
I was skirting the.
Yeah.
I was on the edge there, but I didn't feel like I went over because it was 2 teen lovers running off, if I remember correctly.
Not really, but yeah.
Wait, why? What was there? What were they doing?
Well, no, he was trying to get away from the psychopathic killer chasing him.
Oh, and they met on the road.
Yeah.
She was a runaway, though, right?
No, she was a waitress, I think. Or something.
Damn it.
Not a runaway.
Right.
I don't remember. It's a good movie. That should go in, if we ever do a homoerotic episode, that definitely would be my pick.
Oh, yeah, and I could do Highwaymen with Jim Cassavetes.
Wow, you had an answer. You had an idea for that one awfully fast.
I really like road movies.
I thought you were going to say homoerotic. One and the same.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
All
right, so
yeah, you're not going to get this one, but I have a video prepared for you after you fail. Okay. This time I'm going to wait to share it with you until we're done, so you don't know my clues. Exterminating demons and spiders can be pretty tricky. You're good as long as you keep your mouth shut and your gun loaded, though.
See, I feel like this is something I should get.
Oh yeah, definitely something you should get, honestly.
Demons and spiders, high school. Clue.
Shinya Tsukamoto, creator of the Tetsuo films.
Oh, I only know him from the Tetsuo films. I probably know him from more, but I only know of him through those. All right. Point you. I give in.
Hiruko the Goblin.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to show you a video in just a bit.
Okay. Is this the tiebreaker question? No, we each have one more, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because it's 5.
Yeah. Stabbed in the mouth and yanked through what I think is the window to a cold storage locker.
Okay, give me a clue.
Directed by Sylvain White, who is directing the Slender Man movie, which we're very excited about. I'm not really excited about it.
The Bye Bye Man? I don't know.
No, I'll always know what you did last summer.
I fucking hate you. I hate you so much. See,
there lies the comedy. I used all 3 of them.
Oh my god, you suck! No one can even sit through that one. Alright, you know what? That's it. You're gonna get my ultimate question right now, sir.
Alright.
Man, that Pabst sure tore his stomach up, didn't it?
Clue.
Harry Manfredini. He did the music, by the way.
Oh, yeah. He's done a lot of music. I swear to God, if I feel like an idiot for giving up on this when you tell me what it is, I'm going to be mad, but I give up.
Slaughter High.
Okay, I don't feel stupid.
Okay. Last question. Up to you. Decides whether it's a tie or I win.
I don't want to use my question. I need to find another one.
Why?
Because it's so fucking easy, and I always do that.
Go on.
Like, it's ridiculous. I'm going to tell you what it is, but we're not going to use it. Like, this doesn't count.
This doesn't count, huh?
No. My next clue was bottle to the brain.
Oh, idle hands.
Exactly. And my clue was Eldon Henson, who is now in the Daredevil TV series. But that one doesn't count. I'm going to find another one.
Jack Noseworthy was my clue for idle hands. Not that...
Who's that?
Jack Noseworthy. He played the neighbor.
Oh, you're kind of a dick with your clues.
What? What do you mean?
Your clues are hard. Or I'm just dumb. I feel like your clues are hard, though.
The problem is that if I give the obvious clue, then it gives away the movie. Plus, for the club, Kim Coates was the biggest name in that film. So.
I should have gotten the club. Actually, if you would have said, what was that teen drama about the models? Models, Inc.? If you would have said Models, Inc., I would have gotten it. Because, like, that movie shares, like, 70% of the cast of Models, Inc. Now I have to watch The Club again.
You know, it's a very low-quality version is on YouTube. And is there any more appropriate way to watch The Club?
No, for sure, no. You're actually you're the third person I've ever met that's heard of that movie. Me and my best friend had occasional Friday rituals in high school where we'd watch sometimes Friday, sometimes Cemetery Man, and sometimes The Club. We thought The Club was the coolest movie in the world when we were in high school. And I went back and watched it like 5 years ago. I'm like, what was I thinking? It's awful. All right, so you ready for the last one? This might be easy, it might not be.
Yeah, the real question, since the other one apparently doesn't count.
When being stalked and murdered by ghosts in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, it's important to surround yourself in all things red. Oh, I need to look up a clue.
What, you just assume I'm going to need a clue?
Yeah.
Yeah, I need a clue.
For this you are.
You son of a bitch.
Well, it's not super hard, and it's kind of a trick question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? A trick question from you?
Yeah, surprise, surprise. All right, it's a sequel.
Okay.
I'll give you that. The director is Joel Soyson, who also directed The Prophecy Uprising, The Prophecy Forsaken, Children of the Corn Genesis, Cam to Cam, Buffalo Rider, and Girl Missing. I just gave you his entire directorial resume except for the movie that I'm talking about and the movie that would give it away.
I don't know. The Prophecy?
No. Pulse 2, Afterlife.
Oh,
Duh.
I would not have gotten that one.
I love the Pulse movies because I'm completely insane and ridiculous.
You know what? I'm going to say this is a tie because you had to look up a tiebreaker question to, like, ruin the fact that your last question was lazy.
That's fine. It could be a tie that I won. I'm okay with that.
You may have won this round, Corey. But it's only because you cheat.
I barely cheated this time. I don't appreciate your accusations.
You came to your last question and said, oh, wait a minute, this one sucks, I'm going to look up a new one. That is...
Idle hands question. You would have done the same thing if it was a tiebreaker and you had a super easy question. There's no way you would have rolled the dice on something that simple.
Mine was easier than yours when I did an idle hands question. Because, like, I mentioned The Offspring. That in itself is already a clue.
Yeah, exactly. And I got that before you finished your clue. That's what I'm saying. We know that movie too well.
Anyway. All right, I guess it's time to start on my film, Disturbing Behavior.
Did you look it up on Rotten Tomatoes? I don't mean to interrupt as soon as you... But
I should have.
It got a 34% Rotten.
I should have looked it up before I picked it, but my vague memories of it made me think, well, that was a semi-original film. And then, of course, my memories betrayed me. But we'll get into that.
I still don't hate it, and I'm probably going to interrupt you a bunch, but I'll try not to.
All right. So, unpopular opinion, the 80s may have been a fantastic decade for horror in almost all respects, but teen horror was at its best in the late 90s. And when I say teen horror, I'm not explicitly referring to slashers because there were some epic slash classics in the 70s and 80s. But but the late 90s captured the charm of the decade with their teen movies. There is Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, okay, I like Idle Hands, and I'm willing to admit it's not an epic classic, but it is a decent stoner comedy.
No, I think Idle Hands is a classic stoner comedy.
There's also The Faculty, and technically even Final Destination, since it was really more of a product of the 90s when it was released 3 months into 2000.
I made a girl watch the first one the night before she was getting on a plane to England.
Oh my gosh, you're a monster. I'm not surprised.
I'm terrible. Yeah, I'm a terrible person.
Then you have The Craft, Little Witches, Buffy. The 90s were great. I think I sort of lost most of my point here, but disturbing behavior is fairly typical of 90s teen horror. It's all Dawson's Creek and 90210-esque polished pretty kids fighting the greatest enemy of all, their parents, sort of. Basically, it's Stepford Wives with teens. And I thought that was an incredibly original review until I looked up all the many other reviews online, including the Siskel and Ebert review. And yes, everyone agrees this movie is Stepford Wives with teens.
I thought you were going to be totally original with that, too. I'm sorry. I disliked this movie the first time I saw it. I probably saw this when it was released on DVD back in the day. Mm-hmm. Actually, maybe even VHS still then. I was a little late in adopting DVD. And it was always a little weird and disjointed to me. And the reason I say this now is because you watched the extended cut. I watched the theatrical. And I think at one point I saw the extended cut, so I may have some questions about the differences.
Oh, boy. I've got a lot for you here. David Nutter, who was actually a producer and director for X-Files and the short-lived but amazing Millennium series, was...
Oh, I love Millennium.
He was pissed off at the final result when it came to the theatrical release of this film. I mean, he came close to Alan Smithing it. He was that mad.
I don't blame him. It's kind of a mess at times.
Mm-hmm. There's a bit in the beginning where the main character, played by...
Nick Stahl.
Nick Stahl...
Nick
James
Stahl's
Marsden.
James Marsden.
His sister is playing this weird alien autopsy game on her own, and I thought, gosh, where can I find that game?
I thought the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. I
almost Amazoned it.
I also thought if these teachers weren't jerks, maybe they wouldn't need to reprogram their students.
Yeah, I had a weird problem with the teacher in the first classroom scene. Mm-hmm. Like, this whole movie was really cartoony to me, and I'm going to mention that a few times, I think. But this teacher, like, just pulled me out of the movie immediately because he let me see if I can impersonate his voice. He kind of talked like this. He was teaching class, and he made this weird cartoony voice. Like, it was just very strange to me that they open with it was like the teacher was impersonating a cartoon teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And to me that kind of set the mood for the rest of the movie. But I'm sorry, continue. Like I said, I'm going to do this a lot.
I mean, you can kind of tell who's destined to be brainwashed or programmed based on how bad their hair looks. Gavin,
with the exception of UV.
Yeah, well,
UV just looked way too bad.
UV's got his own issues.
Yeah.
But, like, Gavin never once seems to wash or brush his hair, and it's all uneven and kind of greasy looking. But, of course, when he turns into, I'm sorry, spoiler here, when he becomes one of the blue ribbons, suddenly he's used an endless supply of hair gel to comb his hair back. And controversial opinion, I know, but 90s grunge fashion was terrible. Those hats, dear God, bathe and roll up your sleeves.
I mean, I can dig on, like, I wear a lot of flannel, and I'll wear a flannel around my waist in the summer, like, I'll wear a flannel under my denim jacket, like, but that's kind of 80s too.
Yeah, and there's a difference between wearing a flannel shirt once in a while when the weather's not too intense and, not bathing.
Well, we have discussed my hygiene before. It is not the best.
And the villain of the piece, Dr. Caldecott, had a very pedo mustache. There was no way he would have won me over if I didn't already know what was going on with that guy.
Yeah, for sure. I had so much trouble with guidance counselors already in high school because I was emotionally problematic, which in hindsight I was. Yeah, I had such a problem with guidance counselors back then. Had I seen Pedo Stash Guy,
You would have run for the hills.
Well,
Yeah.
well, no, I would have made fun of it, and I would have gotten kicked out. Well, then it would have resulted in an in-school suspension. I would have had to, like, do the Breakfast Club thing for a day.
There were so many weird music cuts in this film.
Oh, I have a big piece that I'll save for later about the music in this because I'm a little bit mad at you for something, and we'll get to that later.
There now on the plus side, I didn't absolutely hate the movie. There was really fun slang and like insults, like sounds razor, ass scab, cancer corner, shoppy, and squiffed. I mean, all that stuff. Let's be honest. William Sadler, this is officially a Tales from the Crypt episode.
Yeah, your boy was in the movie, but I have a weird sidebar about his character in this. So, your boy plays the janitor. Mm-hmm. The janitor's obviously acting mentally disabled, so he is able to learn more about what's going on, which is kind of a plot hole because how does he already, like, he must have been working there for a long time. Like, how does he know that he's going to need to hear all this stuff down the road? You know, kind of a plot hole, but whatever.
Yeah, because Gavin can no longer be the voice of the driving plot, that's why.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh, that's a very good point, actually. So, the janitor, what was his name? Damien, I believe?
Something like that.
Yeah, Damien, Darian. I have it written down here.
I just know him as Bill.
All right, anyways, it doesn't matter. So, the janitor. I knew this kid. I will not call this kid a friend because he was one of the worst human beings I've ever met in my life. This kid, I went to college with him one of my last years, and he, back home one summer, actually, no, I think it was for a couple of years, he worked at, like, a Walmart or a Home Depot or one of those big box stores. It doesn't matter which one. The first day, and this kind of speaks to who this kid is, his coworkers thought that he was mentally disabled. And it is a little funny, I'll admit that, but it's also very terrible. So he decides to go with it, and for however long he worked there, which was a long time, it was either like a year or at least 3 months, I forget. He spent that entire time acting like a mentally disabled person just to get out of work.
Wow.
Now we've got the janitor, yeah, it's pretty awful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he told that story to us one day, and we were sitting in our little lounge, the green room, and we're all like, dude, that's really awful. He's like, oh, no, man, it's super funny. And this girl's like, you know what? I don't want to be your friend anymore after that story, and straight up meant it. She never talked to him again. But the janitor's kind of pulling the same thing, but he's got a decent reason, although he shouldn't have that reason so early in his career, probably, but whatever.
Well,
It's Steve Boy, and he's great in any movie.
Yeah, here's why I think he was the way he was. I think when the writer or the director or the producer sat down with him and cast him, they said, Bill, we just want you to say weird shit and walk around with a bag of rats. That work for you? And then he said, bring it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if his dialogue wasn't even written. Like,
and when it comes to Gavin, who basically drove the whole plot because he was the only reason the main character even knew what was going on because he's a voyeur, let's be honest. I mean, he would have just seen teens banging in cars if it wasn't for the Blue Ribbons being this brain-programmed, like, freaky cult. But Gavin carries a gun around freaking out and spying on people. He's a voyeur at 16 or 17. Maybe brainwashing wasn't such a bad idea for this particular instance.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we're also talking in a pre-9/11. Like, both of our movies have a lot of very pre-Columbine.
Well, was Columbine? I mean, this came out in '98. When was Columbine?
This was released a year before Columbine.
Oh,
Columbine
okay.
was April 20th, 1999, and this movie was released on July 24th,
So is it possible?
1998.
Is it possible?
So it was a summer release.
Is it possible then that grunge music caused Columbine?
No, but I think that if we were able to talk to the Columbine kids, I believe they would have seen and really liked Nick Stahl's character, Gavin, in this. I also think they would have seen and very much liked JD in Heathers, which I'll get to later. But that's not to say I blame movies for what happened. This is because two very troubled and horrible teenagers did bad stuff.
Well, art reflects life.
I definitely,
so
I definitely think that they saw these movies. Yeah. As creepy as he is, he's got the most poetic dialogue in any of these 90s teen films. Like that montage he did, well, not a montage, I guess, the little piece he did, the monologue he did about the cliques in the cafeteria. I want to read that at a poetry reading sometime. Like, that was awesome.
It kind of made me think that maybe them turning him, it was too soon in the film, because he could have probably offered a lot of more amazing dialogue. He had
I think so,
some
too.
of the best lines.
All the best lines.
And, I mean, these teens, the blue ribbons, they kill their girlfriends and shoot cops. I'm not sure I follow the town's logic that this whole thing was a good idea. And the programming...
Again, that's another whole...
Yeah, this programming is seriously flawed if getting turned on makes teenagers overheat.
Yeah, seriously.
But then I also thought, I'm not sure if that they normally overheat when they get turned on, or that's just the effect James Marsden has on people.
It's definitely the effect James Marsden has on me, especially in the first season of Westworld.
I mean, who doesn't just start banging their heads up against mirrors and stripping off their shirts when they're in
bad, wrong. That legit freak. There are two parts in this movie that legit freak me out. Like, everything in the asylum before Katie Holmes punches that child. And then the 90s song plays and they run around. That was a pretty freaky scene. And then the bad wrong thing. Like, I have a problem with head injuries and people repeating themselves or saying weird things afterwards. Yeah, so that kind of freaked me out.
So I'm going to come clean here. I watched the extended fan cut because I thought I was going to get more out of the experience. I got 20 more minutes, and 20 more minutes I would have liked to have had back. They didn't even, for the scenes they cut back in, they didn't even tidy up the audio or the lighting to make the cut scenes match a little better. You could immediately tell when there was an awkward, cut in the film.
I'm actually okay with that because then I know for sure what was cut in and what I hadn't seen before.
And it was mostly character development and dialogue and then a sex scene. So, I mean, none of it was absolutely necessary.
Does Steve and, what's her name, Razor Girl, Rachel, get it on?
They do.
Good for them.
And is it just me, or did this mental hospital ward have, the worst security on the planet?
It's one guy.
Yeah.
Who didn't even really know what to do when the alarm started going off. He just kind of looked slightly confused at his blinking lights and then, sauntered on out there to see what was up.
Yeah, and these nurses are just letting these people walk around with their compulsive triggers in their hands, like toothbrushes and dolls and shit, that, clearly sets these people off, and they're just we'll let them have it, That's appropriate.
Oh, totally. Not to mention all those devices are either choking hazards or potential shivs.
And I just love that moment where they just punch her and run. Save Caldicott's daughter? Nah, screw it. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. And that's kind of... Oh, go ahead.
Why are the evil groups of young boys in movies always so homoerotic? Am I just reading too much into it? I mean, there's girls who say a few lines, but it's mostly dude time in this movie.
No, I think that... I think... I'm not sure they did it on purpose, but there's definitely... Yeah, the dudes are definitely more into aggressively touching each other than they are aggressively touching the ladies. There's a lot more fighting than there is hugging in this film.
And it really seems like legit counseling would have been easier than brain surgery.
Yeah, for sure. Especially this weird Clockwork Orange...
Exactly!
eye brand nonsense that wasn't working, that was obviously not working. The parents even recognize this at one point. You've got that one mom in the meeting being like, my kid's kind of been an asshole to everybody except for the other blue ribbons since this started. And Caldicott's got this dumb excuse where he's like, well, sometimes they feel more comfortable with their own in the beginning, blah, blah, blah. No, dude, your kid is punching and super strength throwing people who aren't in the club across convenience stores. There's a problem here. Like, unless you're, like, making super soldiers and we don't know that, there's a problem here.
Now, I will say what I appreciate about Caldecott is that he falls just in line perfectly as the dastardly school guidance counselor and mad scientist character. We don't get many good mad scientists these days in our movies, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's very true, and he is, like, one mustache curl away from twirling as well.
Let's just talk about UV right now. I
love UV so much.
I got so much to unpack here. But first, at the beginning I was like, is he albino or does he just have really, really pale skin and blonde hair? And I thought he was creepy on my first impression. But then at the end, him bursting in to save the day makes me wonder if he spent a couple of hours after he saw everything going down and just chilled out with a couple of bags of chips trying to motivate himself, being like, yeah, I better stop this from happening. Just a few more Cheetos.
I'll get to this after one more joint.
He definitely won me over by the end.
Yeah, see, I loved him from the beginning. He never came across to me as, like, creepy or weird. He was just like, I mean, everybody had those kids, like, the weed dealer in your high school. You know, he was maybe an over-the-top version of that, but, like, those are the kids I hung out with in high school, you know? So, once again, I'm like, I'm reminded of my past in a good way, and I'm like, all right, yeah, I'd hang with you, and you'd save my life at the end. That's cool. And I remember the first time I saw this film, and he came in, I'm like, holy shit, a movie where the stoner saves the day. This is groundbreaking. This will go down in history. Of course, it's been all but forgotten, but yeah, I love me some UV.
Unfortunately, in my situation, the UV I knew in high school, I thought he was super cool in high school because he was just funny as shit. After, like, a year later, he went on to shoot and kill his roommate. So I guess my impression of the lovable stoner dealer in high school was a little colored by that.
Yeah, but that's also the kind of the problem with guys like UV, too. Like, they're cool and funny in high school, but they never actually leave. Like, they never grow, really. There's no evolution after high school. And I've seen this in my UV-like friends. They're still doing the same shit they were doing 22 years ago, you know?
So I didn't know if you were aware of this. I did, like I said, I watched the extended cut, which was a fan edit. And they actually removed the ending that was in the theatrical release. And instead...
that's what I wanted to know about. That's one of the things I wanted to know about.
So in the fan edit, UV shot Gavin 3 times, and Gavin was like, oh man, you could have just taken one shot, UV. It took 3, and Gavin died.
Oh man.
But I liked the ending in the theatrical release. I thought it was a decent wraparound. I don't know. I liked the idea of Gavin, I guess, living and starting a new generation of blue ribbons. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that ending better than the one you just told me, but I have a weird situation about the ending that I'd like to talk to you about real quick.
Well, just keep in mind, there are several different cuts, and the 2000 DVD, has a bunch of scenes. Most of what was cut in the theatrical release was just talking, and, like I said, character development and some backstory, a sex scene in a truck. Nothing that seemed absolutely essential to the plot, but it's still strange that they cut 115 minutes down to 83. They could have at least kept 7 of those cut minutes to meet the 90-minute standard.
Yeah, for sure. It was a short movie. Mm-hmm. Well, the cut I watched was a short movie. Mm-hmm. All right, so Maddie, this movie made me watch not only a Harvey Danger video, but a video by The Flies as well. I had to watch that Got You Where I Want You video by The Flies, and then I forget the Paranoia video by Harvey Danger, because I thought that I was in another one of those, like I thought I slipped reality again, because I had this memory of the end of that movie, instead of like them swarming the car and janitor driving off the cliff.
With the best ending line, hey teacher, leave those kids alone.
That was great. I wonder if they paid Pink Floyd for that. So, no, yeah, I had
this... Oh, man, William Sadler's going to say that? Go on.
Again, he probably just did that. Like, I'm sure it wasn't in the script. All right, so I had it in my head that at the end of this movie, he did drive his car with all the equipment off the cliff, but then all the kids voluntarily jumped afterwards. And I watched the movie last night, and I spent a decent chunk of the day while I was working thinking about this. I'm like, why do I distinctly remember this? And then it dawned on me, it's one of the videos. It's from one of the music videos from the soundtrack. So about an hour and a half ago when I was preparing for this, it was driving me nuts. So I started watching these videos. So I watched that stupid paranoia video the whole way through, and it didn't even come close to happening in that. So I'm like, all right, I'll try the flies. And lo and behold, the video for Got You Where I Want You, like, it's so cringy. Like, the band obviously hates the lead singer. He's trying to like slam dance with him, and they're just ignoring him and playing their instruments. Katie Holmes and James Marsden are both in the video playing, I assume, a version of themselves from the film. But instead of like acting out the movie, it sort of goes off the rails, and Katie Holmes pushes one of the dudes off the cliff, and then all of them start jumping off the cliff to that bad, like, I don't know if you remember, but there's a reggae breakdown in this song.
What? I don't. That was the 90s for you.
Yeah, it's some terrible, again, this is a bunch of white dudes from what I could tell, and there's this bad reggae breakdown and all these high school students jumping off a cliff, and Katie Holmes and James Marsden.
Oh,
it was absolutely ridiculous. And then I accidentally, after the video, let YouTube playing and a Space Hog song auto played, and I wanted to die. So that's why I was a little bit mad at you.
Okay, well, I actually did like some of the music in this movie. It wasn't really appropriate for the scenes, but it took me back.
Yeah, some of it was okay. There was a decent, Harvester of Sorrow, I think, by Metallica was in there. There was some okay stuff. All right, so the first point I would like to make is Katie Holmes is such bullshit in this movie. I understand that actors are liars, essentially. Like, they're lying about who they are for the duration of the film, and that's fine. That's what actors do.
Hold on. You're only lying if you break character.
How do you figure?
Well, that's a sort of acting tenet. Like, when you break character, that's when you're officially lying. You wouldn't understand. You're not an actor, Corey.
You're right. I'm not. All right, so if you're going to be a character, you need to be a convincing version of this character, and in no reality is Katie Holmes at all this badass poor chick. Like, Katie Holmes reminds me of, there were a few girls in high school that would only talk to me around October, seriously, because they wanted to borrow my clothes so they could dress like badasses for Halloween. And that's what Katie Holmes was. Katie Holmes was playing one of these girls on Halloween in the movie, and it drove me utterly crazy. Oh, and her saying razor all the time. Oh, nobody's ever going to say razor. I mean, it's 19 years later. Obviously, we've already proved that razor's not going to be a thing. But
or
I'm so glad it was.
That's totally razor of you to say that. Is that the appropriate situation for that word?
Sure. It was, I think your usage of razor was pretty razor.
Okay. Go on, I'm sorry.
All right, what's next on my list? Okay, so this is a question about the extended cut. So after Gavin and Steve fight over the gun by that lake, was there a scene with Gavin sneaking back into his house, or did it cut straight to the next day in the version you watched?
It cut straight to the next day.
All right, see, that's another weird thing. I have this memory of after that scene, and again, this could be in another cut somewhere because this movie's chopped to hell.
Yeah,
but...
well, actually, funny that you say that. There's not just the theatrical and then the extended cut. There are multiple versions of this for TV, DVD, and bootleg. Even USA and TNT showed different versions.
Oh, wow. I'm not at all surprised.
So if you see it one day, you're not likely to see the same version the next time you find this movie. And that's what's so bizarre about it.
Yeah. Well, I may get obsessed with this scene and try to find it because I'm super curious about it. Sorry, this is going to be a little difficult for me to get out without laughing. So Dr. Caldecott is basically making nice guys and incels out of this Pacific Northwestern town. Like, to the point where I'm wondering if he gave them fedoras and Reddit accounts immediately after the procedure. Like, this movie was so ahead of its time.
Do incels go to yogurt shoppies?
I imagine incels would go to yogurt shoppies, and yeah, it's because it's nice, wholesome. That's the nice thing to do.
Now, this is a small thing, but did you notice when the guy had that huge freak out in the grocery store and threw the guy at the meat cooler, all the bottles of water on top of the meat cooler?
No, I didn't catch
Individual bottles of water that I swear were just staged there so it would look like there was more chaos as they fell down.
You're probably right.
And I just thought, who stores their water above a meat cooler in individual bottles without price tags?
It was effective. All right, so you caught the dude with the mohawk every once in a while, the dude with the big red mohawk and the spiky bits on the sides?
I think so, yeah.
All right, so this took me back to a more tragic time in my high school.
Oh, tragic.
Not bad, like just annoying for me, I guess is a better way to put it. So when I was 15, I got my first mohawk. I ran away from home, got my hair cut. It was a whole big thing. We don't need to get into that.
Oh, yeah, you just bring that up.
So this mohawk caused two separate weird problems for me in high school. Number one, I was walking into geography class one day, and it was a relatively angry teacher who turned out, like, after high school, I ended up, seeing her at the bar occasionally, and she was a very nice lady. But I hated her in high school.
Well, of course.
Yeah, exactly. But no, and she was mean. She was very mean in high school. So I walk into her class one day, and I guess she had just had enough because she's like, go to the gym and wash your hair. She made me wash my mohawk down. Like, before I was allowed in her class. It was so embarrassing, like, in front of students and stuff. It was awful. So there was that, and then that was also the semester I decided to try to do some extracurricular stuff, and I decided, did you have office runners in your high school?
What's an office runner?
Like, an office runner is like a volunteer position where, like, a kid will sit in a desk outside and, like, run passes to people and, like, run little errands around the building.
No.
Well, I applied to do that, and on my first day, I'm sitting there, waiting for my jobs, saying hi to people walking in and stuff, and the vice principal calls me into his office, and he starts telling me this story about Don Eagle. Don Eagle was apparently a wrestler in, like, the 50s or 60s, or whenever old people were young back then. I don't remember. And Don Eagle apparently had a mohawk, and it was called the Don Eagle. He was telling me about how two students in his high school decided to get Don Eagles, and they were ostracized and beat up for it, which was kind of felt like a veiled threat to me. And then he told me I wasn't allowed to be an office runner because I had a Don Eagle haircut.
Aww.
Yeah, it was real weird. So that sort of set the tone for the rest of my life of always looking like a weirdo and having to, like, prove myself not that weird, which has been fun.
The things I say are weird, but I've always dressed fairly unobtrusively. Nobody tends to notice me unless I'm talking, so I don't have any crazy high school experiences to share with you.
I mean, I like to think at this point I fit in a little bit better, but I've got facial tattoos and holes in my face. Like, I don't fit in anywhere, but people seem to like me, and they let me do things, so that's okay.
I don't fit in anywhere.
Oh, woe is me. So I think we got through all my notes.
Yeah. I think in 8th grade, I told my mom and dad, I was like, I want to be a goth. And my dad was like, no. And that was the end of that. No.
Well, see, there's your first mistake. You don't tell them you want to be something. You gradually become something so they don't notice until it's too late and you've already cut up and re-sewn all your clothes. That's what I did. And that's what I continued to do with my tattoos. They started getting further and further down my arm until I got a mom tattoo on my hand, because then it's okay because it's a mom tattoo, so I've smoothed it over. And I got the rest of my hands done, my fingers done, my neck done. I started with the back of my neck and then worked my way around. And then after all that, I finally got my face tattooed.
Oh, man.
So you just got to ease them into that stuff.
So you probably would have been a good nominee for the Blue Ribbons.
Oh, for sure. Although, yeah, I for sure would have been a great nominee for the Blue Ribbons. I wasn't really a bad kid in high school. I was just bored and annoyed. So I was more irritating than I was bad. But yeah, I definitely would have been Blue Ribboned. Faux show. No, the only other thing that annoyed me about the movie itself is, like, wouldn't they stop the ferry if some kid jumps his dirt bike over the raised pier? Like, wouldn't they get on the radio and be like, hey, this kid did a dumb thing, we need to stop and get him back?
Well, let's be honest, the cops in this town aren't very good at what they do.
True. And at that point, like, maybe the ferry driver was just trying to get out of there, too, because they kind of hinted that, like, they were the last kids that weren't blue ribboned.
Mm.
And what about the parents? They just left his parents behind.
Well, their parents were kind of dicks. They wanted them to be programmed and have, like, chips installed in their eyeballs.
Yeah, but I don't think the parents really understood that it was a procedure, because if you remember, they talked about, like, weekend motivational retreats and stuff like that.
Well, if you get right down to it, the older brother who had taken his own life, James Marsden's character's older brother, you don't just have a Romeo and Juliet situation in your life for no reason. There's usually some poor parenting involved.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, we have no idea what kind of parents they are, really.
Yeah. I will say, for sure, without speaking ill of my parents, they would sign me up for that shit in a heartbeat. Like, no question. If this thing existed when I was a kid in my town, I would have been signed up for it. I would have been a blue ribbon immediately.
And so, that was disturbing behavior.
Disturbing behavior, ladies and gentlemen.
It's strange to me that this relatively okay movie has such dedicated fans, but kudos to you guys out there for your dedication, I suppose. Keep doing those fan edits. Maybe tidy them up a bit more, and who knows what you can accomplish with your apparent voluminous amount of free time.
In another 19 years, maybe it'll be maybe it'll finally be the masterpiece it deserves to be.
Yeah, maybe.
So, Maddie, whether to kill yourself or not is one of the most important decisions a teenager will ever make.
Oh, God.
That may be the most important lesson I learned from this movie. That doesn't actually have any suicide. It's got attempted suicide. I guess JD's situation, kind of.
It's an infectious song about suicide.
Teenage suicide.
Don't do it.
Teenage suicide. She blew it. Yeah, it does. So I feel a little weird talking about this movie since I'm a 40-year-old man at this point. Although these kids would be a little bit older than me now. Like, this is probably my experiences in high school. I would have been in, like, 6th or 7th grade when this movie came out. So Winona Ryder's a little older than me. But I haven't really matured since high school, so I might have some perspective on this film. And though I hate it when people unironically use the word party as a verb, I love 80s teen lingo, and I especially love the 80s teen lingo in this, and all I want to do is quote the dialogue from this movie, so I'm going to try to get it out of my system real quick, if that's okay.
Okay, as long as I get to quote my favorite line as soon as you're done.
It'll be very. So that's one of them. It will be very, which I kind of dug, but I also just kept waiting for very what? Very what? It's also full of such gems as "You're such a pillowcase," "Did you have a brain tumor for breakfast?" and "Everybody's life's got static," which may be another very important lesson this movie's taught me. And I'm going to let you do your line here because I don't want to take it from you. I have a feeling it's one of my last two.
When teenagers complain that they want to be treated like human beings, it's usually because they are being treated like human beings.
Oh, no, that's a good one, but that's not one of them.
I think I know what one of your other favorite lines is going to be.
Probably. But did you notice that the exchanges, and I didn't notice this until this watch, but all the exchanges between Veronica and her parents were generally the same conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Just slightly different topics. Like, it always ended with her calling her father an idiot, and somebody, and then somebody offering somebody else pate.
Mm-hmm. They always eat pate.
Pate, no.
I love pate.
No. You know that some people make placenta pate?
Well, that's a little too far for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can't eat pate because all I think about is placenta.
Well,
I watch too much TV.
That just means you need counseling.
You're probably right. All right, so my other two favorite lines is, of course, "Fuck me, saw." Of course.
You're going to have to repeat that because I just interrupted you.
No, actually, I think I'll say it again, but I think that you should leave in that cut because I think that your excitement is perfect. But one of my other favorite lines is, of course, "Fuck me gently with a chainsaw," and it's probably the best line in any film ever. Apparently, there's a Heathers musical because we live in a terrible, terrible, poisonous world.
I've heard it's fairly shallow and it doesn't really communicate the meaning that the film had about society.
I'm sure. But I did ask one of my students if that phrase was still in there, and they said it was. And finally, another great quote in this film is at one point when Winona Ryder is writing in her journal, or Veronica is writing in her journal, she calls her friends swatch dogs and Diet Coke heads. Which, between Gavin's speeches in Disturbing Behavior and the entirety of the dialogue in Heathers, like, we picked some very poetic films.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say what you will about Disturbing Behavior, but some of that dialogue just rolls. It's great.
Even Bill Sadler has a great speech, when he talks about these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Heathers was one of my favorite movies as an edgy middle schooler. I was always a little into the weird guys at school with trench coats and sick senses of humor as a result of this movie.
Oh, we would have been best friends. We would have been in high school. So JD's trench coat bothers me, though. Like, it's almost beautiful. Like, I love the whole denim duster cowboy thing, but it's got this sort of, like, second layer of fabric that hangs over the chest, and you do some costuming. You might know what it's called. It's kind of like, if it was an actual duster, like an oil-soaked duster that cowboys would wear, it would be a cowl, and you could flip it up. Mm-hmm. But this is just in the front, and it makes me hate this beautiful jacket that I want to love so much.
JD could be a cult leader, easily.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's got the perfect amount of sociopathic narcissism and philosopher in there, like, for sure.
It's hard to believe that Michael Lehman, who directed this, and it's a beautiful movie, also directed Airheads.
And Hudson Hawk.
Yeah.
Which Airheads is not a bad movie.
It's a little after its time.
It is, but I think it's still good as sort of a mirror to the time. It's a time capsule for me. I dig that movie.
I can't entirely hate any Brendan Fraser movie, but...
Yeah, agreed. And Hudson Hawk, like, it got a lot of hate, and it still gets a lot of hate, but that's a really good movie. It's a really interesting movie, I guess I should say. Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess I should probably talk about Heathers a little bit, too.
Yeah, so everyone can follow what we're saying here.
So Heathers is a movie about Veronica, a girl who is just over the line for being a fringe member of the Heathers, a group of girls that all share the same name, Heather. They're the most popular girls in school, and from here on out, they will be known as Heather der Führer for the leader, Cheerleader Heather, and Shannon Doherty. Best I could do. During a lunchtime poll where they walk around and ask questions to their fellow students, she meets a narcissistic sociopath philosopher named Jason Dean, played by Christian Slater, who goes by JD for short.
Was almost at his peak in this film.
Yeah, and I realized something about that, too. He's at his peak here, but he climbed to that peak out of poorly impersonating Jack Nicholson. I never thought of this before, but if you look at, like, all of his movies, there's a whole lot of, like, bad Jack Nicholson in there.
I just thought he had a similar personality. I never really thought he was impersonating him.
I feel like he might be doing, because if you see him now, like, if you watch him in Bad Robot, Mr. Robot, he's definitely kind of moved into himself a little more because he's older, and there's a lot less Jack Nicholson in him. I think it might have been possibly subconscious, but definitely, like, there was influence there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and this is not me ripping on him, I absolutely love Christian Slater. Anything he did before that movie Broken Arrow with John Travolta was pretty great. Especially this and Pump Up the Volume and Cuffs.
True Romance.
Ooh, yeah, True Romance is great, too. I need to watch that again.
Oh, it's so good.
So the Heathers are horrible to their fellow students, especially the other girls, and it's to the point where, like, I was, like, melting back in my seat and cringing a little bit. It was really hard for me to watch Martha walk up. What was that kid's name? It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. They're jocks. It doesn't matter. Walk up to the jocks because she thought he had written this, like, slightly sexual love letter, and her just to get laughed at so hard. I felt so bad for Martha. Martha is the true, like, tragedy of this film.
Yeah, you really feel for her. Like, this unwarranted venom towards this poor girl by just about everyone around her. And even the way they mock her when she, I'm sorry to skip ahead, but when she actively attempts suicide, honestly, it's even darker than the intentional and unintentional murders in this film. It's the darkest part about Heathers.
Yeah, it really, really is. And it was also hard. We had a Martha in my school, and she got a lot of similar shit by some of the more terrible of our classmates. And it was just always terrible. I've never, I mean, I'm sure I've done some accidental bullying, but I've never, liked people who made a career as a bully. Like, anybody in high school has done shitty things to somebody else. Your chemicals are all imbalanced, but like for people who made a high school career of it, they're the worst.
Mm-hmm. Just going out of your way to make someone else's life absolutely miserable is pretty sick.
Mm-hmm. For sure. But I mean, the punchline there too is like the tragedy of the Heathers is they're completely unaware of the fact that everyone is using them back as well. Mm-hmm. Like, whether it's people trying to use them for sex or to get up another rung on this social ladder, or in JD's case, to eventually accomplish a sinister goal. Mm-hmm. Like, they're just as objectified as everyone they're objectifying. Mm. They're just so arrogant and so terrible that they don't seem to notice it. With the exception of Cheerleader Heather. Cheerleader Heather kind of gets it. Whether she got it from the beginning or learns it later on, I'm not sure, but like she kind of...
Well, even Veronica's pretty blind as the main character. I mean, she goes off with JD to have that date in the middle of being with the jock and her other friend, and she just leaves her friend to be raped there, clearly being assaulted in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Veronica, again, Martha is the victim in this movie. There are no innocent characters. There are no really even good characters. Maybe Betty as well. Mm-hmm. Betty seems to be a sweet woman.
You know, she is an Estevez. She is Martin Sheen's daughter.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. The only thing I noticed there was the Archie's reference with Betty and Veronica. Mm-hmm. And it made me wonder if there were more Archie's references in there, but I didn't. I was too busy focusing on comedy to... Yeah,
I don't remember a Reggie, so... Or a Moose. Was there a Moose? I don't remember.
No, I don't think so.
No, Dilton Doily or Chuck. I read a lot of Archie's comics.
Was
there a...
Have you read the zombie comics?
The zombie comics? No.
Afterlife with Archie, they're actually pretty good. I recommend them. They Jughead's cat or dog dies, I forget, and he takes her to Sabrina, and Sabrina brings him back to life, and then he fights Archie, and Archie's like patient zero and infects the rest of Riverdale. It's great.
I kind of stopped reading Archie after they did that really weird experimental change in art style. I just didn't really like it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Then you might not dig the art in this too. Mm. Dude, there was a Punisher crossover with the Archies.
I'm a purist, so... I mean...
I understand. All right, so, back to Heather's again. We're going to keep doing this, and that's fine. So...
I want to say Gag Me with a Spoon, but that's Valley Girls.
That is Valley Girls. So Heather Der Führer invites Veronica to a frat party, which I completely forgot was the end-all be-all of things for girls under 18 to do in 80s movies. Everybody was so stoked to be invited to the college party, even though every time they went there, they were sexually assaulted in one way or another. So this, of course, happens here. They meet two horrible human beings and start drinking. Heather Der Führer is taken to a room where she's pressured into blowing her fella, which I giggled at, but obviously not because of the pressured sexual stuff, but in the 80s there was this advertisement for Memorex that was bigger than life. You saw it everywhere. And you've seen it too. It was a dude sitting in a couch getting blown back by his speakers.
Yeah.
As Heather Der Führer is going down on this guy, the camera pans up to that Memorex ad and the guy getting blown by his speakers, and I couldn't help but giggle at the ridiculously of that.
Have you ever seen Stay Tuned?
Oh, yeah, with Joan Ritter?
Yeah, there's a little fake Memorex joke in there where, like, the radio turns on and everything and his head gets blown off.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that might be one of the most pervasive ads in the history of ads. It's right up there with, like, Where's the Beef, I've Fallen, I Can't Get Up, and Spuds MacKenzie. Man, people loved their commercials in the 80s.
They really did.
All right, so Heather is upstairs blowing some terrible dude while Veronica is left to her own devices, where she gets way too drunk and herself is nearly raped, but she manages to escape the clutches of this terrible college monster and tracks down Heather, who... there's actually a really great scene of her in the bathroom washing her mouth out and spitting at the mirror because she's so disgusted with herself. And I thought that was a really good, I mean, obviously, I don't think a woman should be disgusted with herself for sexual acts, but when pressured into it, like, I get why she did it. And I thought that was a really good, subtle scene showing us that she actually did feel bad about stuff like this.
You know, that actress, Kim Walker, passed away in 2001 from a brain tumor.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And she was dating Chris Slater at the time that this movie was made.
I'm wondering if this is when Winona Ryder was dating Johnny Depp. So after all this, they meet again downstairs, and Veronica's like, Heather, I want to get out of here. This place sucks. Let's get out of here. And Heather's, of course, like, no, we're at this cool college party, and I'm popular, and you're going to do what I say. And then Veronica throws up on the carpet in front of her, which is apparently a super hardcore social faux pas, because this is the inciting incident for the murders in the movie, essentially. Had this not happened, I'm not sure the murders would have occurred, because it's all about this revenge.
As if there weren't, like, 5 or 6 other girls probably vomiting at that party.
Yeah, exactly. People throw up. It's no big deal. So they go home, and creepy stalker JD is at Veronica's house, and they bone real quick and then hatch a plan to go greet Heather Derfier in the morning with a, quote, hangover cure. That will instead make her vomit and level the playing field, so she'll have nothing to spread around school. Therefore, Veronica's reputation is saved, or whatever's going on here.
Veronica is so self-absorbed that she doesn't immediately realize how creepy it is that he crept in through her bedroom window when they've only talked twice.
Yeah, that's the problem with her, is she's so busy thinking she's so much better than everybody else, essentially, that she doesn't see anything that's going on around her.
Yeah, and the genius element of the story is that the madness only truly ends when she opens her eyes. You know, it takes her a long time to get over her own self-absorbed diary entries and complicity with the insane JD.
Oh yeah, she doesn't get it until the last scene, until the final act of that movie. So yeah, JD and Veronica are in Heather's kitchen, and Veronica's trying to figure out what's going to make her throw up. She's like, orange juice and milk and maybe some phlegm, which then made me dry heave. Hearing Christian Slater and Winona Ryder trying to hack up loogies was so, like, I'm sitting in my bed last night dry heaving while I'm watching this scene. It's so gross. So while this is going on, JD pours some drain cleaner into a cup. And he's like, let's give her this. And Veronica's like, no, this is going to kill her. And he's like, yeah, but that's okay. And she's like, no, we're just going to make her puke. So they put it down, and then they kiss. And while they're kissing, Veronica gets the cups mixed up. JD notices but doesn't say anything. So they go in, greet Heather after some passive-aggressive comments and some aggressive comments. She finally drinks it, drops dead, and her last words as she collapses through her glass coffee table are corn nuts.
Yeah.
I assume she ate them earlier and could taste them at that point. I don't know.
It's an oddly dreamy sort of film, and in some respects it kind of reminds me of 3 O'Clock High.
Oh, I love 3 O'Clock High. That reminds me, I need to check to see if the price went down on it. I really want to own that.
That movie is, like, so overlooked, but it was one of the best.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, as far as the whole, like, weird surrealist high school movie genre goes, like, I would put that up there near Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There's some real tension and some real, like, I felt some feelings watching 3 O'Clock High. That movie's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's basically a teen, like, remake of
probably High Noon.
Probably. I think so. Yeah.
So I think I forgot to mention, but Veronica. No, I didn't. I mentioned the note, but I don't think I mentioned that Veronica wrote the note. She's got a skill where she can forge people's handwriting. So she forges Heather Derfier's suicide note, and they get away with it, like, completely scot-free, because cops are terrible in small towns in Ohio in the 80s.
And she's not overly emotionally impacted by this event.
No, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Nobody is. But we'll get to the impacts of the suicide after we get to the suicide pact, I think is. But yeah, I do have a lot to say about that, because that's where the movie really gets interesting for me. After this part, we meet JD's father, and we kind of get a little bit of a glimpse into why JD's so messed up. His dad's this yuppie asshole who owns a demolition company that blows up buildings, and he records them all, and then so he can watch them over and over again in a very sociopathic manner. Mm-hmm. He takes pleasure in destroying things that people don't want destroyed. Like, he's always talking about, like, oh, and these I forget what it was exactly, but these rare trees or something that people were trying to save, I blew those up too. Mm-hmm. And we find out that his mother committed suicide by walking into one of the buildings, a library, right before his father blew it up.
And you know, the first time I watched this movie, I thought the dialogue he had with his son was kind of amusing, how he'd say, "Hi, Dad," and his son would say, "How you doing, sport," and stuff like that. But they never dropped that act. And it almost like, upon a second or third viewing, it seems almost like venomous that they're not playing around, you know?
Yeah, I got that same feeling too. I think it's because I have daddy issues of my own. At the first couple of times I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's cool. They have their own little way of talking. Like, that's pretty neat. You know, I wish I had something like that with my dad. Blah blah blah. But yeah, after watching it last night, like, there's definitely a lot of malice coming from JD, especially. Mm-hmm. I think that his dad just doesn't care, but JD is definitely full of animosity.
He's very disturbed.
Oh yeah, that's putting it lightly. I mean, which is another thing. Like, the first thing he does in the movie is he pulls an actual Magnum revolver on the two jocks and pulls the trigger. It's full of blanks, and it's pre-Columbine, so he doesn't really get into trouble. They don't even take the gun away. But yeah, that's kind of a sign that you might have some problems.
Yeah, a few. I think if he hadn't have met Veronica, he might have gone through with it and just done a plain old shooting. But Veronica, his muse, inspired him.
I think, yeah, I think you're onto something there. That reminds me of another really interesting thing about JD as a character. There's all this talk, and I'm going to go back to Columbine again, because it's really hard to talk about movies like this without talking about Columbine. Mm-hmm.
Or any of the other many school shootings we've had in the last decade and a half.
Yeah, I don't mean to make light and say Columbine's the only one, but that's the one I know the most about, so that's the one that I can comment on and relate to.
It's the textbook case that changed the world, let's be honest.
Yeah. But JD is a lot like Dylan and, why am I forgetting his name?
Well, their names don't really matter.
In fact, I shouldn't even be saying them. There was all this talk in the news about how they were bullied and all this stuff, but it turns out those two weren't bullies. They were actually very well liked, and if anything, they were the bullies. They were a lot like JD's character. Like, JD's not a victim. If anything, he's just an asshole and deserves any of the shit he gets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that they made a character so much like those school shooters so long before it happened.
Well, I mean, there's something to say for psychological profiling.
Yeah, true. And that seems like to be...
And he's also kind of the Iago to Shannon Doherty.
Wait, define.
Sort of like, if not Iago, I would say the Jafar, if that seems more relevant. The advisor whispering in her ear.
Yeah, he's like her Lady Macbeth.
Mm-hmm. That works too, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to actually get to that soon too, but we're at the double date.
God. Like, okay, hold up. When I said Iago, I was actually referring to the other Shakespeare play, Othello. I just realized that the bird in Aladdin is named Iago.
I haven't seen Aladdin since I was a child.
That was not the Iago I was referring to. I was referring to the Othello one.
Well, I assumed it was that one, but I don't know Othello well enough to know where you were going, so. All right, so we're at this fated double date where cheerleader Heather pressures Veronica into going on this double date, and like you said, as cheerleader Heather is basically being raped on this dirty farm pasture in the middle of nowhere. Veronica runs away from the other jock and goes out with JD. So it turns out the next day, these two jocks have spread a rumor that Veronica had double-teamed them, and, well, that they had double-teamed Veronica, I guess. Let me do that again.
Tomato, tomato.
Well, no, because she would have had to split into two of herself to double-team two guys. So it's more like tomato to tomato. So they spread a rumor the next day that they double-teamed Veronica, and Veronica wants revenge. So again, JD comes up with this really transparent plot that is obviously going to end in them murdering these jocks, but Veronica goes along with it. The idea is he's got these bullets that shoot tranquilizer pellets that just break the skin, so it looks like they've been killed, but they're not. So the idea is to shoot them with these tranquilizer bullets and make it look like they're dead, and put all this gay stuff, which the whole mineral water gag was kind of hilarious. This movie is actually really careful for the way they treat homosexuality in an 80s movie, if you think about it.
Yeah, well, it's because they're not really making fun of the act of homosexuality. They're making fun of what people think of homosexuality.
Right, and I thought that was really cool. But
the eyeshadow, was it?
Yeah. And I forget what the magazine was called, but it's neither here nor there. Yeah. So the idea is Veronica's going to lure them to this place near the school, and she's going to pretend like she's going to let them double team them, and they're going to shoot them. So anyways, it goes off pretty much the way you think it's going to go off. There's a little bit of a chase scene, but JD shoots one, Veronica shoots the other, and we've got two dead jocks in a gay suicide pact, which leads to the hilarious joint funeral. Both of them with their football helmets on, clutching footballs, with the dad screaming in pain, "I love my dead gay son." It was so good. And there's another beautiful scene where, I forget what the joke is, but Veronica cracks some kind of joke. And one of the jock's sisters hears her and turns around and just has this heartbreaking look on this child's face. And I think Veronica starts to understand the impact her choices are having when she sees that little kid.
Yeah, it's like the crack in her facade. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of when everything sort of changes. So Shannon Doherty now takes over as Top Heather with JD's help. He brings her the scrunchie, which is sort of the crown in this movie. Mm-hmm. And he does this because he needs her to circulate a petition under false well, not only does he give it to her under false pretenses, but then she turns around and makes everybody sign it under other false pretenses. Mm-hmm. So nobody really
knows what they're signing.
Is signing anything truthful. In the end, they're signing a giant suicide pact.
Yeah, it's sort of like, the terms and conditions of Apple or Google.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking about this, and in high school, I would have signed any petition put in front of me, whether it was during my political phase. I'd be like, okay, you look like a liberal, I'll sign this. Or I just wanted someone to get away from me. I mean, I'd sign a petition without reading it today if it meant someone would leave me alone that much faster.
I wouldn't have. I didn't trust class politics.
Oh, yeah. See, I totally...
Every libertarian 7th grader.
I just didn't care. I just wanted it all to be over. So I totally would have signed a mass suicide note. And it's amazing I'm still alive. So the interesting thing here, we now have essentially the body count of the film. This is who dies. I mean, JD dies, but there's only 4. And the impact the suicides are having on the students is pretty great. Some of them are just like Shannon Doherty is now using this to be in the limelight and be seen, and she's also using it to take power and that stuff. All these students are saying nice things about about Heather, especially Heather Derfear.
And the staff having that debate on weighing the value of a student's death, that student's how long, life, whether or not they're worth having a half day.
Yeah, that was pretty great too. So yeah, and I forget the line, but it was basically Veronica saying, in death, these students are given a depth and a personality that they didn't have in life. So essentially her plan of getting these people out of here to make the world a better place hasn't worked. It's just made the world weirder and her life more complicated, I think. Which again, I think is another step in her realizing that she's really screwed things up.
Oh, and that freaking guidance counselor.
Oh yeah, and her hand holding stuff. This is when Martha starts to get super sad too, because the hippie guidance counselor sets up this whole pans across the cafeteria thing where they hold hands and the media's there, and Martha sees it and she sees how fake everything is and she doesn't want any part of it. She actually crawls under the table to hide, and then later on realizes that she doesn't want to live anymore, and she she's wearing a Big Fun shirt, number one, which is the band who wrote the Teenage Suicide song. She pins her suicide note to this shirt, and then she walks out in traffic. But it does not kill her, thankfully, because Martha is the only truly innocent in this film. Mm-hmm. So this all culminates into the big pep rally. All the students are in the cafeteria. JD plants all these bombs in the basement.
Mind you, having a big fun pep rally only days after 3 people have taken their lives.
Right. Oh, because that's what the petition JD told Shannon Doherty that the petition was to have Big Fun play the prom. Mm. And I know that's unrelated to the pep rally, but you reminded me of that. I should mention how Veronica finds out what JD's plans are, because this is another great scene in the movie. Veronica knows JD's going to come over and try to kill her. So she fakes her own death and hangs herself from her bedroom ceiling. So JD walks in, sees her dead, and being the narcissistic monster that he is, he decides to lay out the plans to her corpse as a goodbye, I guess. So he leaves. Her mom comes in to, like, have her come down for dinner and sees her daughter hanging up there. And then Veronica's head springs up. She drops herself down, looks up at her mom and says, "Hey, Mom, why so tense?" Oh, it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah, back to the pep rally. Veronica knows what's happening. She goes to the boiler room to confront JD. They get into a fight. The bombs are already planted. She shoots JD's finger off, which is pretty impressive for a girl who's probably never shot a gun in her life, especially one that's at least a .44 caliber handgun, I would imagine, based on the barrel.
Well, she's tired of his shit.
Yeah, for sure. But she shoots his middle finger off and shoots him a couple more times. He stabs the dynamite, and it stops the countdown. Everybody's saved. So she walks outside all bloodied and beaten up. She walks down the stairs, heading to the parking lot to go home, I assume. And out comes JD, bloodied, shot, just a mess, holding his jacket shut. He has then strapped all the dynamite to himself and has decided to blow himself up. He's got philosophical nonsense about how this would have been beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And he asks Veronica what would she do if the school was blown up and she was free. What would she do? She just takes a cigarette out of her pocket, puts it in her mouth, and waits for JD's timer to tick down. It finally does, and doesn't go off. He bangs it a little bit. It starts up again. He explodes. Her cigarette's lit. The pep rally's over, and nobody notices any of this happens. So she wanders back inside, takes Shannon Doherty's scrunchie, puts it on her own head, becomes the new Heather, Veronica. Mecha Veronica, Uber Veronica, whatever you want.
She levels up.
Yeah, she levels up and sees Martha in her riding wheelchair, and this is another part. It's supposed to be such a touching end, but for some reason my brain has twisted it. What happens is Veronica asks Martha if instead of going to the prom, she would like to come over to Veronica's house and watch movies and eat popcorn. And Martha says her exact words are, "I'd like that." And every time since I was a kid, the first time I saw this movie, I always hear Martha as a pirate when she says that line. For some reason, "I'd like that."
You know, it's funny you say that, because I thought, like, that was like her one real clear line of dialogue that you hear. I thought, oh, she has a beautiful voice.
It was, and she does, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but I hear pirate. So Martha's this weird pirate at the end of the film, and it's just completely, I don't know. But yeah, so that is Heathers.
All in all, 2 interesting movies, both sort of a pretty firm example of their decade, I think.
Oh, for sure, definitely. I think that they reflected their decades well. I don't think so much has changed, at least not yet. Like, Things didn't really change a lot in high school until 1999, but we don't need to get into that because that's political. I did just remember another story before we're done with this completely. So this involves Glassface Dude.
Oh, your friend who filled the cup with glass when y'all were in a parking lot and then threw it and y'all chased it out of the parking lot. Okay.
Getting long already, but I really want to tell this story because I want to illustrate how different high school was before April 20th, 1999. One day, this kid I know is driving out of the main parking lot, and the dude from the Glassface story, the popular kid, cuts him off, and they get into a screaming match, car to car. And the dude I know had a 9mm semi-automatic handgun in his glove box that he just had in his car. And he pulls it out and he waves it around. The popular kid freaks out and drives away, and he drives off. But because this was what it was then, it was still weird. I mean, it's always weird and scary to be threatened by a gun. But nobody told on him. It wasn't something that was reported. And even if it was, it probably would have only been a 3-day suspension and possibly a fine for the gun. And obviously his father getting called because it was his gun. It's so weird to think that, like, that sort of thing could have happened back then and not resulted in a SWAT team, you know?
I almost want to say that the more terrified we become as a society of guns, the more people kind of want to use them.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I actually started, and I'm a little bit ashamed of this, but I actually started collecting guns fairly quickly after 9/11 happened. I realized years later that I can't let some ridiculous unseen force and fear of some unseen force direct my life. So I've since continued living, and I'm not some crazy survivalist, but there was a time where I was walking down that road. And I mean, I know a lot of cool stuff because of it. I could live in the woods for a period of time because of it. But yeah.
Well,
buy a bunch of guns.
I feel like I want to make a tasteless joke about leaving glasses of water everywhere to protect myself, but I didn't really like signs that much, so I won't.
I feel like M. Night Shyamalan was like, all right, everybody, here's what I want you to do. Act as bored as possible anytime a camera's on you. Because everybody is just so flat in that movie.
A lot of people enjoyed it, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I don't care what anybody says. Joaquin Phoenix and Mel Gibson, gay farmers. Not related.
You know, honestly, when I watched A Quiet Place recently, I thought, this could easily be a sequel to Signs if there wasn't so much water.
Oh, I really want to see that. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, it's good. Shoot. You know, speaking of water, have you noticed the staff in the hallway has been standing by that water cooler and draining it for the last 20 minutes straight?
Yeah, and they've been staring at us with some pretty glassy looks in their eyes. I think we might want to get out of here as soon as possible.
Well, before we do that, let's tell our listeners about a few little concluding statements. You can find our blog at hallow-holic.blogspot.com or hallow-holic.wordpress.com.
You can reach us on Twitter at nowhere23 or just search for Hallow-Holics and it'll come up.
You can email us at hallow-holics@outlook.com.
And something about Podpedia.
Yes, Corey, tell them about Podpedia.
I don't want to tell them about Podpedia. You tell them about Podpedia. I still feel weird about Podpedia.
Okay, Podpedia is a Wikipedia for podcasts. You can find our portal at HHA on Podpedia.
They're making us say this.
Oh my gosh, stop doing that.
I'm going to do it every time until I forget.